Right, the quarterly labour force survey released this week shows that more than 500,000 jobs were created in South Africa between the first and second quarters of this year. According to the statistics, the sectors that made gains in job creation were the community and social services sector, followed by trade, finance and construction sectors. However, both the manufacturing and transport sectors recorded job losses, while the South Africa's consumer price index for July shows a sustained upward trajectory. Meanwhile, the Minister of Employment and Labour, Thulas Nxesi, is expected to announce new regulations for domestic workers. Regulations are set to address a number of issues that include the Compensation of Occupational Injuries and Diseases Act to compensate domestic workers injured at their employers' homes. The Minister now joins us via Zoom. Minister, very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for availing yourself to us.
Good afternoon.
All right, let's start here.
Good afternoon to you.
All right, let's start here. The amendment to the Compensation of Occupational Injuries and Disease Act to compensate domestic workers injured at their employers' houses. I'd like us to unpack this one, especially given the fact that, as we report, we've heard some gruesome stories. I mean, just one, for example, as I think at the top of my head, where one domestic worker was, really mauled by the dog of her employer. Why has it taken so long, first of all, to address these kinds of issues? But also, let's talk to the merits and what this now says.
Well, I think it's the history which we're having in this particular country, where a number of workers have never been treated as employees as they were supposed to be treated. They were just working, and we didn't have that employer-employee relationship. And what we've been trying to do, we've been trying to correct that situation. Remember, it had to take the Constitutional Court after a particular incident where a worker slipped and drowned in the swimming pool. Yeah. And we were forced then to come up with that particular. So it's the legacy of apartheid to say we had to include the domestic workers under this category of the employees who can enjoy the purposes of the benefits of this compensation for occupational injuries. It's a long struggle of trying to deal with the worker rights. You know that in the farms, we're still faced with a number of problems, although some have this right, but they are not enjoying it. So it's part of the improvement mechanisms for the workers and ensuring that workers are protected as employees. They are not just treated as workers, because when somebody works for you, that person does not have any particular relationship or employer-employee relationship.
Yeah. Minister Nxesi, talk us through the sort of negotiations. Obviously, where there are amendments, there has to be, conversations with, relevant stakeholders. Is there hope that these particular regulations that you're wanting to implement will indeed be accepted? There's also an issue of people just blatantly ignoring the law, and when people are desperate in situations that are desperate, which we might find many of the domestic workers are in, they just accept whatever that's given to them.
No, the legislation is going to be accepted. It is at an advanced stage in terms of the consultations at the level of NEDLEC and now in Parliament, where they are dealing with that particular issue. And I think if all the political parties in Parliament request the labor rights, I mean, they are able to respect, not request, the labor rights, they will be able to implement this particular legislation. By the way, as I've said, there's no way that they are going to be denying this, because it was an instruction by the Constitutional Court after long discussion. So we are forced to be able to put this and be able to protect these workers. It will be immoral that the most vulnerable workers are not protected at there will be those who will be objecting.
Yeah. Let's not talk on another issue I'd like to raise while I have you, sir. Unemployment figures soaring quite high. According to the third quarter employment stats, how is your department addressing? I mean, we're obviously talking about those who are employed at the moment, but I think, your department also should certainly be looking at the issue of unemployment. And really, I mean, the desperation that I speak of, where people do actually just accept anything from employment. This is at the root of it, the fact that there really aren't employment opportunities. So, let's talk to this issue of these unemployment figures in this country, which are really, I mean, from your point, I think you should also admit that it is quite a desperate situation.
Definitely, Flo. The Stats SA's, which published its quarterly labor force for the second quarter of the year, it's showing the unemployment rate decreased a little bit for the second consecutive quarter, but the country's unemployment rate improved, albeit marginally. I think we must be able to say, I mean, 0.6% point to that 34.5% in the first quarter and 33 now in the second quarter. So this unemployment, we can be able to say that it indicates, or the data indicates, that 648,000 jobs were gained between the first quarter and the second quarter. But the total number of persons was employed is now at 15.6 million. But the reality is that the number of the discouraged workers, it has decreased also, and the number of people who were not economically active, but it has resulted in the picture which we're seeing. So generally and tentatively, the employment statistics are moving towards what we call the positive direction, reflecting the underlying growth, but not nearly fast to deal with the magnitude of the unemployment challenge. And then, as government, we must continue to intensify our employment initiatives and continue with the program announced by the President of the Economic Recovery and Reconstruction Plan. And we have to implement a range of measures. And we've talked about the presidential stimulus, presidential employment stimulus, which has, over the past 2 years, created close to 800, in fact, more than 800,000 jobs and livelihood, and will soon surpass 1 million. In addition, the what we call the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention has provided support to the young workers.
Yeah.
There are a number of measures which we have put in place. And we think that with those measures, look at what the BTIC is doing, the massive infrastructure projects which are coming, the operation to unlock the investment, the accelerated reforms in the energy sector, because we must accept that the issue of the energy has contributed a lot in terms of the job losses. So what has been announced as the measures by the President is expected to boost the economic growth and the job creation. All
right, Minister, thank you very much for giving us your time, and we're certainly looking forward to hearing more on these amendments and certainly the implementation of them more than anything. Minister Thulas Nxesi, thanks, sir.
Thank you, Flo.
All right, that is the Minister of Employment and Labour, Thulas Nxesi, who is, of course, expected to announce new regulations on the plight of domestic workers.